Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video with me, Sherman. Today we're taking a look at patch notes 3.2.4 on the PTS, and this is all going to come out on update 16 when it goes live next week with the Clockwork City release. And some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it doesn't change a thing. We'll get to that in a second. Let's go ahead and take a look at the patch notes, starting with the combat changes to the Warden, the green balance skill. Seduced secluded grove. They increase the ability's cost of its it and its morphs to 90 from 75. In PvE, this is going to hurt. In PvP, nothing. It's not even going to phase it, because the way people make ultimate builds in PvP, they can generate so much ultimate so fast that this isn't even going to phase PvP. So in PvE, this is going to hurt a lot of builds, especially tank builds, so that the Warden tank builds, this is going to affect them. But not by a whole lot. 15 ultimate is not hard to get, especially if you're running Bloodspawn with it. You're going to generate that pretty quick. So, moving on. This is a nice fix. St. Lothus and St. Felms will take longer to enrage when engaged with St. Olms, and will remain dormant longer when defeated while engaged with St. Olms. This is a good change for this, because this is one of the things that set this content so hard, was the St. Lothus and St. Felms. When they were in the fight with you against St. Olms, when you were playing it on the hardest of hard difficulties, it can make that fight a little bit more challenging, because you have to deal with them as well as St. Olms. And a lot of people what they're going to do with this now is they're going to have a tank and healer, grab those two, pull them aside, or try to, and beat them down with maybe a couple DPS while the rest of them work on St. Olms. I mean, that's going to be the easier option here. But it depends on how some of the top guilds do it and stuff like that. But that's what I see, is a lot of people grabbing St. Lothus, St. Felms, maybe grabbing 4 DPS or 3 DP, maybe 3 DPS, and pulling these aside, burning them down real quick, keeping them out of the fight with St. Olms. Once these are down, they'll go in and re-engage on the St. Olms, while the tank and healer stay on them, stay over there for a little bit, or stay within range, so when they come back up, they can grab them, pull them back to that section, and keep them locked down, basically. It's a good change, though. I do like that. Moving on down here through the rest of these combat balance changes. Crystal shards, this ability and crystal fragments morph no longer stun the enemy hit. The crystal blast morph continues to stun the initial enemy hit. This is a good change, but at the same time, it's not going to make Crystal Blast any more, like, when it comes to uses of skills, some skills get overused and some don't. Crystal Frags gets overused. We all know this. Crystal Blast hardly gets used by some people. It gets used by a lot, but most people don't use it because of the cast time. Now, this isn't going to change its use. People are just not going to use it. Even with what the developers say down here, when they wanted to separate the function of the ability into two more distinct roles, Crystal Shards was overloaded with its stun, its high damage, instant cast, and reduced cost. Now, it doesn't matter. Like I said, this isn't going to change a thing. Ruined Prison increased Consta's ability and morphs by approximately 16%. Ouch, that's an overkill. 10% maybe, 8% would have been good. 16% is just overkill. Weapons, the one-handed sword and shield. The shield wall increased the cost of its ability and its morphs by 35 points. Okay, it's not going to stop its overuse in PvP. You just made it worse for tanks in PvE. Bow abilities. Scattershot. This ability and morphs no longer apply a 5-second disorientate enemies hit. Instead, they now apply a 1.5 second stun. If I remember right, doesn't one of the scatter shots have a knockback? And if so, doesn't that mean that when they get knocked to the ground and it takes them 1 second to come up, that 1.5 second stun is basically going to be 0.5 seconds extra? I mean, it's kind of like pointless. Just saying. Restoration Staff. They increase the cost of this ability and its morphs to 125 from 100. This is gonna, again, it's not gonna change anything in PvP. It's only hurting PvE. Moving on to the heavy armor passive Wrath. This passive ability has been replaced with Revitalize, which is basically what they did was they split Rapid Mending, because Rapid Mending used to give you resources back on heavy attacks. They're just switching it over to Wrath. and replacing with a Revitalize and leaving Rapid Minting to give you 8% healing received. Now, it's funny what they say down here, the reason why. We want each armor type to have unique trade-offs. Heavy armor's main advantage is increase to survivability, while its disadvantage is its lower damage and healing power. Even with the 200 weapon damage it had and spell damage, it was still the lowest damage armor set in the game, the lowest healing armor set in the game. To emphasize that they removed Wrath. That doesn't emphasize. To do something to make heavy armor more capable would have been increase the primary passive, which increases the resistance values, increasing the health passive to give you more health. That would have been something that increases the survivability of heavy armor. All they did was removed one passive, which really only helped certain builds in certain benefits. Other than that, they did nothing. They didn't even change heavy armor in its effect. It still has the highest survivability already because of the 8% healing received, which is healing power, by the way. And they removed the weapon damage from it and changed that to Revitalize, making it to where it's about restoring your resources. Heavy armor has the best sustainability in the game. It's the best survivability in the game. They didn't change it at all. They just made it lose a passive, which was only beneficial to certain builds. Like a lot of my builds played off of Wrath a lot because they utilized the Wrath passive to give them greater healing and greater survivability. But even taking that away isn't going to change their effectiveness. It just reduces the effectiveness of the heals and the damage that they do. Heavy armor can still do a good amount of damage. In fact, a good heavy armor build can still push DPS equal to, if not as close, like equal to a decent DPS. Like, we're talking like 32k DPS. Heavy armor can do that. This doesn't change that fact. You just took away the small advantage it got from the 200 weapon damage and 200 spell damage, which can be made up now with other gear sets. So, hey, whatever. Dragon Knight, Earth and Heart. They fixed Petrify, an issue where this ability could still cast this ability on morphs on an enemy immune to crowd control effects. That's fixed. Dawn Wraith, they fixed the same issue with the morphs to clips on the Templar Dawn Wraith. And there's a known issue with the unstable core morph will currently immediately trigger in its area of effect damage if you recast it on the same enemy. That's going to go live in the next update. So, they're going to fix that in the next update. Next up, 2 itemization balances. One is Merciless Charge. This is the two-handed Maelstrom weapon. They increase the damage done by this item set's proc by 6,000 damage over 5 seconds, up from 4,300 damage over 5 seconds. Now, that wasn't the problem. The problem is that it does physical damage over time. It doesn't do a bleed damage over time. That's what everyone has been asking for on this set, is to change the physical damage to bleed damage. If they did that, the Maelstrom weapon would be a viable weapon choice even in PvP and PvE for some builds in particular situations. So that would have been a good change, but instead they just increased 6,000 damage over time, over 5 seconds. 6,000 damage over 5 seconds is like 1.375 or something damage. So 1,375 damage over, and it's somewhere around there. It'd be like, I think it'd be like 1,374 point like no. But it's still not going to change anything. It's still, nobody's going to use it. Now, this one is kind of interesting. They fixed an issue where this item set's procs was not reducing the cost of living vines, nature's grass, or energy orb, and clarified the tooltip with the item set to indicate it only works for magicka and stamina healing abilities. So that Nightblade healer I just released a build on, where I showed that it worked against the thing that reduced the cost of your health, like the health use, is now not going to work. It's not going to work with that one. So this is going to make that build I made utilizing this staff, which is the Asylum Sanctorium staff, basically useless, and I'm going to have to go and get go back to the staff, the Master Staff, with that one. And then they did some other fixes. This is a really big change right here. This is the dungeon and group content. They adjusted the minimum level for the following normal dungeons to level 45 for the purpose of using Dungeon Finder. Okay, this one shouldn't have been on there. This one shouldn't be on there. This one shouldn't be on there. This one shouldn't be on this list. The only ones that should be on this list are the DLC dungeons. The bandaged cells too. Man, I can walk through this with a level 10 character. If you already have max CP, you can walk through this. Like literally, this is the easiest dungeon, an easy dungeon. City of Ash 2. Now this one I might have to say might be on the list, but still. And at 45, level 45, it doesn't matter, because at level 45, the only thing difference between the level 10 and the level 45 is absolutely nothing. They have the same amount of stats. It doesn't matter, because the thing that makes up most of your character's build at that time is your gear. It doesn't have anything to do with passives, really. And even with passives, it's not going to change the fact that the Bloodroot Forge is still hard for low-level characters. Cradle of Shadows, low characters, is hard for low-level characters. Any of the DLC stuff is going to be hard for those people. And that's what a lot of people were telling them, is we want the DLC dungeons to have a higher level requirement. And it should be, all DLC dungeons should require CP 160 to start. It doesn't matter if they're normal or vet, it should be CP 160. Because they were added when content had a requirement for that. So CP 160 would be more understandable for like Bloodroot Forge, Cradle of Shadows, Imperial City Prison, Ruins of Mazatoon, the White Gold Tower, those things I could understand. Now, they did an adjustment where they adjusted the minimum level for following veteran dungeons to 160. All the dungeons I just said. Except for Crypt of Hearts 2 and City of Ash 2. And Crypt of Hearts 2, the only reason why this is here, and I think City of... if you're going to make the Path 2 dungeons here require 45, you should make all Path dungeons here require 45, CP 160. That would make sense. And I kind of agree with this guy. Wait, so red passive is being replaced with nothing? Yeah, I agree, dude. So this is just, it's a good change, but it's stupid, too. This is a good change. If you're going to do this with 45, it should be like that for CP 160. This change here is just stupid. You're going to leave out all these other quests that, because they're on vet mode, you can, at 45 is when you get vet, ability to do vet. But the normal dungeons are going to open up at this level. But you can do them at vet too. So it's except for City of Ash 2 and Crypt of Hearts 2. But Darkshade Caverns 2, I can do this at vet at 45. Doesn't make a lot of sense. See, that's what I'm getting at. Is Elden Hollow 2. That one I can understand because it's not too bad. Fungal Grotto 2, don't understand. Spindle Clutch 2, yeah, I can understand. Wayrasaurus 2, don't understand. And that's because certain bosses in these are pretty much pains in the butt. Like Fungal Grotto 2, you have the boss in the middle that chains you down and everything. That should be some of these dungeons need to be in Veteran 160. Some don't. All these ones definitely need to be in Veteran too. The normal dungeons that came with the base game, those don't need to be at 45 and CP 160. But that's pretty much it for the patch notes, guys. I think that some of these changes coming in are good, some are bad, some are just dumb and don't have a purpose and aren't going to change anything. And that's just my personal opinion. So I have a week before the patch goes live. I'm going to be working on a few builds this week to release before then. I was going to do a build on every class, but I've changed my mind because of the Wrath passive change. And it actually affected 3 of the builds, or actually 4 of the builds I was going to release, because I was going to utilize that portion of it to benefit the builds I was working on, and now I can't do that, so it kind of throws those 4 builds out the window. So I'm just going to release the builds that weren't going to be built around using Wrath, and I'm going to focus on getting those ones done and ready, and have them ready for release before it goes live. And it's just going to be, there's going to be a couple healer builds and 2 tank builds, so nothing major, nothing fancy. And I'll try to have those out by Friday, or by Friday, I should have them out. I'm going to try and release one tomorrow, one on, so one Tuesday, one Wednesday, one Thursday, and one on Friday. And we'll have to see where it goes from there. I do have an update for Meridian's Guardian coming. It's not going to come out until after the update, and that's because I still have to farm out some gear for it, and I have to do some adjustments to the build itself because it did play on the Wrath passive. Now I got to make some adjustments to the build so that it doesn't utilize that passive, and I have somewhere in there made up that difference. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. If you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, hit the subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy will see you all later. Bye.